Yay! I'm so glad that we're doing this. I love that you have like a platform that you're using.
I love that I finally put it out into the world.
So it's been in the works for a
It's
while.
been in the works for a while. Um, kind of something that I told myself for a little while, like, oh, I don't know if I'm ready for that. And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden, just like how I left my relationship, I just woke up and decided today's the day. So, how many years have you been gone now from your?
This is going to be the 11th year since I left. Yeah. So it's been a long time, and I honestly didn't deal with it until I just started going to therapy in like August to deal with it. And like, I'm married, like happily married, have a kid, like, but once he was born, so much came up for me that I just could not cope anymore with like what had happened. And like, even though, luckily I was never physically abused by him, it's still like the mind game of it. I still have effects from. It's been a long time since I left, but it still affects me a lot.
You told me that you have just gone through some EMDR therapy.
Yes, yeah, yep.
Can you
It's been good.
explain what EMDR therapy is?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll give you kind of my understanding of it. There's neural pathways in your brain. When something traumatic happens to you, the neural pathways, especially something like narcissistic abuse, where it's like repetitive and like, you're developing that CPTSD,
Mhm.
those neural pathways in your brain make like a groove almost, and it like reinstates those negative values that you believe in yourself of like, I'm not worthy of love, I'm not enough, I'm not safe, like that kind of stuff. And so that leaves your brain in a constant fight or flight response. So what EMDR does is it taps back into that neural pathway through either, it's called bilateral stimulation. So it's like looking at lights that go back and forth, and you have to watch the lights, or like tapping, bilateral tapping. And so by doing that, you tap into that neural pathway while you're discussing it, and you just talk about like how you feel and what you would say to yourself if you could go back, and what you would say to him if you could go back, and like then you go back into it. Like, it's repetitive. You keep doing that where you just keep going back into that neural pathway, and then you start the healing part of like tap back into that neural pathway, think about that situation, and tell yourself you are worthy of love and you are safe. And
Mhm.
so it's very weird, and I don't really fully understand it, but it works.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Do you suggest EMDR as opposed to like traditional
Yes.
talk therapy, especially for a survivor?
Yes. Yes. I think EMDR is really, really good for anyone who has suffered any kind of trauma.
Hmm.
Um, So, anyone who's like a survivor of abuse or has been in, like, a lot of times people who are in major accidents
Hmm.
go through EMDR. It's really helpful, and it's a way to get to the root of that belief quicker.
I've heard that you're not so EMDR will bring you to a specific memory, and you're
Hmm.
supposed to kind of watch the memory as it happens, but not stay in that memory.
Yes.
And then that therapist will help you process it in real time by, like you said, getting to the root of
Yes.
like your belief.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's really interesting.
I think that's really cool. So, we're here to talk about your story. And
Yes.
when you sent me your story, um, you had said that he's a classic narcissist and emotionally abusive.
Hmm.
That was the first line
Yeah.
of your story. But then you went on to describe financial and sexual abuse, which I
Yes.
thought was interesting. You said he would sexually coerce me all the time and abuse me and accuse me, sorry, of using him as a toy And then he would manipulate me into going out on school nights and force me to foot the bill for him getting shit-faced.
Yep.
And since we're talking about processing here, I was curious to know, do you feel that maybe you're still processing that sexual and financial abuse piece?
Yes. Oh, definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. I am definitely more protective of my finances, and I'm more protective of my body. So I don't like being touched really. I mean, like obviously with my husband it's a different story, and it's all consensual and
Mhm.
we love each other, but when I don't want people to touch me, I don't want them to touch me. You know what I mean? I
Mhm.
don't want to be hugged. I don't want your hand on my arm. Just step away. And I'm definitely more protective of my finances now too, because
Mhm.
I racked up a lot of credit card debt when I was with him. And so, because I was working 2 jobs and he had no job. And so I was paying all of our bills, mine and his. And because of that, I had so much debt when I left, and I had $36 in my checking account that I felt like I had no control.
Mhm.
And so I had to call my parents to come and get me because I lived in a different state. And so they had to come and get me and help me move. And I was just like, I am never putting myself in this position again.
Mhm. Mhm.
So it's a lot to process.
It is so much to process. Um, when your parents came to get you, can you walk us through that day?
Yeah. So what what triggered me to leave was I had suspicions of him cheating on me for pretty much the whole time we were together. And he was very protective of his phone. So he left his phone with me in the truck while he ran into the store to grab something. And I was like, this is it. This is my opportunity. So I snooped, obviously. And he had been
Because you
talking
had
to,
a suspicion?
oh yeah, because I had the suspicion. I knew, and I had seen him like on, I don't know if you remember the app Hot or Not. It was kind of like
Yeah.
Tinder before Tinder was around.
Yep.
So I had caught him on Hot or Not swiping, and I didn't say anything just because of, I didn't want to hear the whole argument of don't snoop through my phone. But when
Mhm.
he left his phone, I was like, I have to look. I need to know 100% what's going on. So I snooped, and he had been talking to so many women and had been getting photos of them and like sending them so many inappropriate things. I was just like, I was floored. I mean, it was probably 10 or 15 different girls throughout our relationship. So I immediately called my dad and I was like, he cheated on me. I'm done. Um, I need you to come get me. So my parents showed up, a couple days later with a moving truck
Mhm.
and they helped me pack all my stuff while he was um, out with his friends. And we loaded everything up and they got me a hotel room for 2 weeks until I left my job, and then I drove home.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, you said that it took your parents a couple of days to get
Hmm.
to you.
Yeah.
So, what were those days like when you were waiting? Did you let him know or did you
No.
escape? You
No, I
escaped.
escaped. Yeah. So he went to a family dinner. Um, and I don't remember why I didn't go. I think I was at work and I left work early and I went home and I packed while he was at work.
Mhm.
And I just kind of slowly packed things that like he wouldn't notice. So like, it was springtime, so I packed like all of my summer clothes and put them in the garage, and then I would pack up like my winter coats and put them in the garage just so that I could be more prepared to just kind of load up and leave. Um,
You had to be
so
strategic about your
yes.
process.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. Especially
Yeah.
because he wasn't working, so he was home pretty much all the time.
So, when did you pack when he was sleeping?
He went out to a family dinner.
Oh yeah.
His cousin came to visit. So he was like going out every afternoon and evening with his cousin and his mom
Hmm.
and stepdad. And so I was like, while he's gone, I'm going to pack and like throw things away and kind of get my life in order.
Do you think that he ever had a suspicion?
No,
No.
no, not until I texted his mom the day I was leaving and I said, hey, he cheated on me and I'm leaving today. And then she obviously told him, and then he called me and was like, you're leaving? I'm like, yes. Are you
I mean,
surprised?
you can call one of those 15 other girls.
Right? Yeah, you've got a lineup. I don't think you're going to be
Right.
hurting for long.
So where did you guys meet?
We met through friends.
Okay. Were you, I mean, hot or not was a while ago. So were you in
Yeah.
high school or?
No, so the first time I met him, I was in my early 20s probably. And we kind
Okay.
of like ran with the same group of friends.
Hmm.
So, we would see each other every once in a blue moon. And then once we discovered that both of us were single, we started talking.
Hmm. And what was that talking phase like? I remember when I met my ex, it was like, how in the world do you exist? It just felt
Yes.
so
Love
perfect.
bomby. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
Very love bomby. He was very complimentary of me in every way. Like, you're so beautiful, you're very sexy, you're smart, you're successful, um, you're my dream girl. And so it was just reeling me in.
Yep. Yep. And then once you gave the green light for a relationship, what happened then?
So he lived in a different state. So I moved. I packed up my whole life and moved there.
Mhm.
Um, and I didn't move in with him right away. I got my own apartment because that was like really important to me. But yeah, I just moved there. I had no friends there. I didn't know anybody there except for him.
Mhm.
So it was very isolating, and that initially should have been like, you look back and you're like, well, yeah, obviously it was isolating because that's what they do. Like, but yeah, so it was just really me and him pretty much the whole time we were together.
You and I have a lot of similarities in that sense where I moved states for my ex as well. But one of the thoughts that I always had was, well, you invited me here.
Yes.
You said that you wanted to continue this relationship here in this state, and here I am.
Yep.
So I always felt like it was his responsibility to help integrate me into his life and to introduce me to friends
Yeah.
and to make sure that I was adjusting okay. Did you feel the same way, and do you feel like he did that for you?
I did feel that way to a degree. And he did. He introduced me to all of his friends' girlfriends. And
Mhm.
so we were a pretty close group. Um, and then obviously I made friends at my jobs.
Mhm.
So I did feel like he had asked me to move there. And so it was kind of his responsibility to like make sure that I was okay. Um,
Mhm.
but I feel like he did do that, at least at first.
Okay. So, how quickly would you say um that your abuse started in this relationship?
Subliminally, right away.
Mhm.
He would tell me things. I had had a falling out with my parents when I moved there. And so he would tell
Mhm.
me things like, they don't care about you.
Mhm.
They don't love you like I can. So kind of like already planting the seed of isolation of like, I need to
Isolation.
disconnect from my family and my friends.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, it was pretty immediate. And then, obviously as we got farther down the line, more bigger things started popping up.
You said in the quick cliff notes of your story that you wrote, you said, I worked two jobs to pay the bills while he didn't work at all. He would manipulate me into going to the bars on school nights when I had to work early the next morning. and I'd foot the bill for him getting shit-faced. Then he would throw up in my car, scream at the neighbors, and tell me he didn't like me, and then pass out.
Yep.
Was that something that started pretty quickly after you moved there? Can you kind of like walk me through the progression?
Yeah. So when he drinks hard alcohol, and he thinks it's hilarious, he gets an alter ego, he says, where he's very mean and vindictive and yells a lot, says horrible things. And so the first time I saw that was actually one time when I was visiting him before I moved there. But he wasn't mean to me. He was mean to his friends. And I was like, oh, that's not cool. Like, don't say that. But then once I moved there, it was probably, he was working when I first moved there. So it was after he lost his job. He got fired. So after that was when he really started to spiral and drink a lot. And it was like a weekly thing where he was doing that, where he would drink hard alcohol, he would throw up in my car or like down the outside of the door. I never got to drink and have fun because I was always the designated driver and I was paying the bill.
Somebody had to be the responsible
Yes,
one.
yes. We would go home and he would scream at our next door neighbor. We lived in a duplex and our bedrooms were an adjoined wall, and he would scream at the neighbors because they were pretty loud. And it was just crazy. I felt like I was living in crazy town, and now looking back, I'm like, how did I put up with that?
You were in survival mode.
I was in survival mode. I was. Yeah. And I was working 2 full-time jobs.
Why did he get fired? Was it because of his drinking?
No, he was just a jerk. He's a narcissist, so he doesn't take responsibility for anything. And so he had it out with his boss, and his boss was like, you know what? Leave. I'm done with you. And of course, I'm at work when this happens, and he didn't drive to work, so he calls me and he's like, can you come pick me up? So I leave my job in the middle of the day and go pick him up. I'm like, so embarrassing. My coworkers were probably like, this chick is crazy. Oh.
How did you feel though when you got that call that he had gotten fired? Did you expect to become the only responsible one, or were you thinking, okay, this is just a speed bump and he'll get another job? And did you have like that hope for his potential?
I definitely had the hope. I was like, there's no way he's going to stay jobless. Like, he'll get another job. There were tons of jobs where we were living. And so I was like, it'll be easy. No problem. Never even tried.
He never even tried.
Never even tried.
Was there an amount of like future faking that was done on his part of like, oh I am looking for jobs?
Yes, for sure. He did get a job temporarily with one of our roommates. And they were like, our roommate at the time owned his own small business installing satellite. And so he was like doing that with him for a while, but he just doesn't play nice with other people. I don't know how else to say it. And so he just burned that bridge too.
So you said that you noticed the red flags of him being rude and a narcissist all over the place to other people. How long do you think it took for things to really be focused on you then?
Probably about a year. It was about the time that we moved in together that he started to really hone in on me. And I don't know if it was because I had given up my space and I was more accessible to him to be like a source, you know? But it was about a year in, and then it was really, things got pretty bad at that point.
So you had moved in, and then you felt like because you kind of had given up that freedom, you had some control. You moved in, and then it was like almost immediate
Yes. Yeah.
where he started to focus
Hmm.
solely on you.
Yeah. And that was, about the time that I started noticing that he was on Hot or Not, and he was um, on his phone all the time, and he was very guarded about his phone. Like he would take it into the bathroom with him. And this was before like Instagram was really big, so it was only Facebook mostly. And so already my intuition is like, something's up, something's not right.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
it was about a year in. As soon as I moved in, it was like, something's not right.
What are some of the things, because you mentioned emotional
Mm-hmm.
abuse, what are some of the things that you experienced?
I think I've told you this, but so I'm a petite natural blonde. I'm like 5'1", and this is my natural hair color. And he used to tell me all the time, I love curvy girls with brown hair. And I was
Good
like,
for you.
I am so glad that we are together then. So
Did you
I dyed my
ever?
hair black.
Oh, I was just gonna go there for
Yep,
you.
I did. I did it. Like the first time he said that to me, I was like, I should dye my hair black.
Did it feel like a punch in the gut, or
Oh,
was it just like, I just want his approval. I just want his love.
yeah, it was both. I wanted his approval and his love, but it was also like, why don't you just love me for me? This is how I am.
One thing that I definitely wanted to dig into, because I felt like this was one of the things that hit me the hardest when it came to your story. Because I feel like anyone who could do something like this is just an absolutely terrible person. But you said he would beat his dog
Yeah.
until it
Hmm.
shit.
Yeah.
That I
It was
that
terrifying.
poor dog.
Terrifying when that would happen.
So what would trigger him?
Anything.
What would trigger him into anything?
Anything. Yeah,
So it,
I mean, it would be like the dog got into the trash or something, and that it would be like chaos. And he would just beat him until he defecated, and I was like, that is scary. It was really sad. And he had two dogs.
did he just both of them,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
or
Yep. And the one he would beat until it defecated, but that dog was like an older dog, which makes it even worse because I'm like, my heart.
was there anything that you like could do in those moments? Like, could he even hear
No.
you at that point? Because it just feels like he just went on a
Blackout rage.
rampage.
Yes. It would be like blackout rage.
Mm. Oh my
Hmm.
God. I don't think I have
Yeah.
words. I don't
And
think I have
my
words.
thought was always, if he can do that to his dog, who he's like, this dog was his world, I'm like, what's going to happen if I say the wrong thing? Is that the next step for me?
How long were you in that relationship?
2.5 years, maybe?
So basically, it was like the second year of you being together was when the majority of this stuff would happen. Where you said that you had wondered what he would do to you. Were there ever any instances where you were fearful for your life?
I was never fearful for my life, but he would try and drive home from the bar when he was super drunk. Um, he would yell at our neighbors, and our neighbors were like extremely, I think they were on drugs. I mean, we were like super broke, so we lived in a really shitty duplex. Um, and so I was like, this neighbor is going to shoot us through the wall. Like, he's crazy. So like times like that, I was scared, but I was never like, he's gonna hit me scared.
You had said that second year that you were with him was the worst. That's when things really started to happen. Was there a point in time where you were ready to give up? Because a lot of the times, as a victim of abuse, you don't feel that there's a way out. And sometimes you want to just end it all. Was did you experience a low point like that? What was like your narrative? How did you see yourself during that second year that you were with
I
him?
did. I did have that moment. I had just felt so isolated from all of my family and
Mm-hmm.
friends back home, from everything I knew. Um, and I felt like there was no way out because he had told me for so long, they don't love you, they don't care about you, that I believed him. And so I was like, this is it. Like, this is how it ends for me. Um, Luckily, I had a job where I had a boss who was very young. He was probably, oh, I was like 22, 23 at the time. He was maybe 30, 34, 35, somewhere in there. Um, and I ended up confessing to him, and he was like, you have to leave. Like, you cannot stay in this relationship. That's crazy. And so he and one of my coworkers really encouraged me to call my parents, which I did, thankfully. And that
Mm-hmm.
was really what saved me.
It's nice to finally feel like you have support. And in abuse, because you feel so isolated, it's often you often tell yourself the story of nobody
Hmm.
cares or nobody
Yeah.
knows. And that's because isolation is a tactic to make sure that there are no
Hmm.
whistleblowers on the abuser's
Yeah.
behavior. So, how long were you there and at that job before you finally felt safe enough to tell
I
somebody?
had worked there the full 2 years that I was in that relationship. So it was all the people
And
I
did
had
it
worked
ever,
with that whole time.
do you think that they knew?
I think so. Because I would tell them like, oh, he got drunk last night and threw up in my car again, and they're like, Jenna. So yeah, I think they knew.
How did you get to the point of finally confiding in somebody?
I was It was after he had cheated on me, and I was like, you know what? After I'd confirmed that he had cheated on me, I was like, the gloves are off. That's it. I am done. Like, you can do so much to me, but if you cheat on me, I'm done. And so I was just
Mm-hmm.
so angry at that point, and I had had all that time of building up that anger that finally I was just like, we're over. And I don't care who
Mm-hmm.
knows what you've done. I was done protecting him. Yeah, you know how it is. He loves me. He's a really nice guy, I promise. The protection of his reputation. I was like, no more. I'm not going to do that for you. And when I moved out, I took everything. I took all the toilet paper out of the house. I took all the paper towels. I took all the food. I took everything.
You
I
bought
paid for
it.
it all.
Did you go no contact
No,
after you left?
no. It was a push pull for a
Mm.
few months. Um, and then I finally ended it probably 3 or 4 months later. Like, done, done.
And by that time, you were back home in your
Yeah, I
hometown.
was living with my parents.
What was that like? Because I know I've been in contact with other survivors who I guess don't want to lose the little bit of freedom that they do
Yeah.
have in living with somebody else to going and living with
Hmm.
their parents again.
It
What
was
was that
so
like?
hard. I cried all the time because I had nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I had $36 in my bank account when I left and a boatload of credit card debt. And so I was like, I am just
Yeah.
taking control from one person and giving it to another person is what it felt like. It wasn't like that. My parents were like, do whatever you got to do. Stay here as long as you need. But
Mm-hmm.
I was just like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
That's
it
hard.
was really hard, especially being, at the time like 24 or 25. I was just like, I'm that person moving back in with my parents.
I feel like you have to, there's like essentially two people that you have to grieve when leaving an abusive
Hmm.
relationship. And that is the person or the potential of that
Yes.
person that you thought that you had in that relationship. and then the person that you were before you even went into that relationship. You're grieving those
Yeah.
two people. Do you
Oh,
feel like
for
that's
sure.
do you feel like
Yeah,
that's
for
true?
sure. 100%.
How did you grieve?
I cried a lot and I partied a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
started to party a lot. I worked 2 jobs again and just kept myself busy. That was the only thing that would keep my mind occupied.
I feel like you're the second person that I've had a conversation with who said that they
Hmm.
partied a lot after I guess
Yeah.
regaining your freedom. And I I did as well. Um but for me it was I I guess I was
Yeah.
celebrating freedom. I felt free, and one of the things I wanted to do
Hmm.
was dance. And I would be alone on the dance floor. I didn't care. I I just felt like I needed to shake
Yes.
off all of the years of trauma that I was holding
Yep.
in my body, and I just felt
Yeah.
so free for the first time in 5 years. And it
Yep.
needed to go. I don't know where it was going
Out
to
there.
go, but I was going to leave it on that dance floor. I was going to
Yeah.
leave it on the dance
Yep.
floor.
Definitely.
I like to tell every survivor that I have a conversation with that I truly believe that healing happens in
Yeah.
community, because I don't, I feel, a lot of the times I felt like survivorship was more isolating than the abuse itself, because I was telling myself that I was the only one still experiencing these
Hmm.
emotions, these strong emotions, even years
Yeah.
later, and telling myself that I was broken or messed up. And then once I found friendship in another survivor, that was when my healing really started to
Yeah.
turn the corner of being validated and realizing that I was no
Yeah.
longer alone. Being validated, I am
Yes.
seen,
Yeah,
is a
for
love
sure.
language. Do you have any advice for victims who are still in their relationship, who are maybe looking to leave?
Make a plan and execute it and don't turn back because it's so much brighter on the other side. It's amazing. You just have to make the plan and execute it.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's just going to someone and saying, it could be someone you don't know very well. It could be a coworker like me and just saying, this is happening to me and I need help. Can you help me? And you would be surprised at
Mm-hmm.
the number of people who are willing to help.
The people who are
Yep.
willing to show up for you. That's healing
Mm-hmm.
in and of itself.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Choose
Yes.
yourself. I appreciate you being brave
Thank you.
and sharing your truth and sharing your
Yeah,
story.
thanks for giving us a platform to share.
Absolutely. Absolutely.